John Lemire, Reverend Al, still with us, and joining us now, we have special correspondent at Vanity Fair and host of the Fast Politics podcast, Molly Jong-Fast. She's an MSNBC political analyst, co-founder and CEO of All In Together. Lauren Leader is with us this morning, and publisher and editor-in-chief of the Cook Political Report. Amy Walter is with us this morning. Good to have you all. A lot to talk about. And Amy, we'll start with the Cook Political Report out with a new look at the 2024 race and the issues that matter most to likely swing state voters. In a new survey that is out today, Donald Trump has a lead within the margin of error in Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania. And he and President Joe Biden are tied in Wisconsin. Swing state voters say the economy is the issue that matters most to them, with their own cost of living being the best way to measure it. They also say they are more worried about Biden setting economic policy than about Trump setting abortion policy. And Biden's age is also seen as more of a concern than Trump's temperament and legal issues. Amy, break this down for us, if you could.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. And we looked at voters in all of those important battleground states because we know that those are the states that are ultimately going to decide the next president. And, you know, sometimes politics is complicated and sometimes it's not. In this case, it's not all that complicated. Voters really are frustrated and really disillusioned about the cost of things. It is driving how they think about politics right now. It's the lens through which they are viewing this election. And that helps Donald Trump a lot, not just because they think that Donald Trump would be better on the economy, but they really do believe that the president himself has more power over controlling inflation and prices than a president actually does have. Almost 60% of voters in this poll think that President Biden himself does have control over how much stuff costs. And they don't think that he's doing a particularly good job of it. When we asked how they think Donald Trump would handle issues like controlling the cost of living, 56% said they think he'd do a good job. Only 40% said that of Biden. That's where this race sits right now. And it's one thing, you know, look, we've seen in the past, Mika, that candidates who are seen as maybe not as strong on the economy ultimately win an election, like, say, Barack Obama in 2012. But to be losing by this margin, that is unsustainable at this point for an incumbent.
Yeah, Molly, certainly these numbers are eyebrow-raising. I mean, the overall, it's pretty close. Nevada's 9 points, but most of them are in North Carolina 7, but most within a couple. But the economy, if that's what this election is about, it looks like, per this poll, that President Biden would be in trouble, even though his team would argue vociferously, look at the job we've done since COVID. Look how we've repaired things. So how much of this is Trump amnesia, where people have deluded themselves so the economy was better than actually it was when Trump was in office? And how much of this is simply inflation, which just angers people? And honestly, there's not much a president can do about it.
Well, people hate inflation, and the idea that something you bought is now, you know, significantly higher is just
it's infuriating.
Voters hate that.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, just with the methodology, if I can throw it to Amy here, what is the methodology on this poll, and how was it conducted, and also just can you tell us a little more about the crosstabs?
Yeah, sure. This was conducted by two polling firms, GS Strategies and BSG, one Republican firm, another a Democratic firm. This was online panels and web to text, so this is the way that you can try to get as many voters in your sample that you get through the web and through texts. I think if you look through the crosstabs, the thing that you start to notice is how many undecideds are sitting there that are potentially still able to be won over by Biden. And the question is, what are the issues that are going to motivate them? As you guys pointed out, you know, Trump is ahead in every single one of these states. The one that stands out to me the most is Nevada, where he's close to 50% there. But in these other states, he's basically hitting his 2020 levels. And so to me, it's not as much as that Trump is surging, it's that Biden is really sagging. And the question is, can he get those voters back? If so, I don't know if he gets them back simply on talking about Trump as an existential threat. I think he has to talk about the ways in which Donald Trump's answer to the economy is not going to solve their problems.
So
you can't ignore that.
Another takeaway from the polling of these swing state voters, which is where the election's going to be won or lost. Lauren Leader, is these voters saying they're more worried about Biden setting economic policy than about Trump setting abortion policy. And if anyone thinks that it can't get worse, it can. I mean, the birth control, I mean, Plan B, all these things are on the line.
Yeah, and I mean, I bet like Molly, like I definitely would love to see how this breaks down on gender lines, because as we know, women are more likely to turn out in elections. So sometimes this is one place where, especially like the smaller polls in swing states get a little off base, is that it discounts then like what the actual turnout factor is. But it's not to discount this. Look, I think on the undecided voters, we've been hearing this for a while. There've been a bunch of focus groups. My colleague Mark Halpern's been doing a lot of these, looking at what's happening with these undecideds. When you look at Arizona, I think there's going to be some interesting dynamics relative to the ballot initiative there, which I think has the potential to change the turnout factors, right? So we know that Democrats benefit from turnout. But look, there's no question, like Biden cannot seem to get any wind under his sails on the economy. Like no one believes him. And we heard Steve Ratner earlier, just like the basic wrong information that people have about the state of the economy. It's really remarkable. You know, I think Biden came to this a little late. He's trying to campaign on it now, but they haven't really talked about this for the last few years. Americans continue to think that Republicans, no matter who they are better on the economy, which is just factually wrong. But I don't know how you keep arguing that.
Joe.
I mean, it's a great question. When 50% of Americans think unemployment is like at record highs and unemployment's at 50-year lows, when they think we're in a recession and our economy is actually the strongest in the world, you know, you can throw your hands up or you can figure out how to get the message across, and that's what they've got to do. Amy, I am curious, though. I'd love to get your insight on the issue of abortion in this sense. Before the 22 election, abortion was polling at 4, 5, 6% in a lot of national polls. And I would listen to podcasts, would mock and ridicule Joe Biden for talking about abortion and democracy. And everybody laughed, oh my God, the old man, he doesn't understand. And I was on the phone, actually, Lauren Leader just said his name, I was on the phone with Mark Halpern early election evening of 22, and he called me. He goes, okay, help me. Wait, what's going on with this abortion number? It's at 33%, like in some of these exit polls, is the most important issue. And we were trying to figure out, wait, were they just polling Democrats? What was it? It ended up being the defining issue of that race. It ended up being the defining issue of the Wisconsin Supreme Court case. We could go through all of it. I'm trying to figure out the disconnect, like 6 months out, 3 months out, 1 month out, where people go, abortion doesn't matter. And then when they go to the polls, man, it seems to be the top issue. Can you help sort through that for us?
I will, and I think these are great questions that you all are raising about this, which is why this is a nice starting point for us. It's not the ending point. And I think, you know, one reaction to what happened in 2022 is that the people who were the most motivated to actually go out and vote are the kinds of people that traditionally now are voting for Democrats. In fact, I think Lauren asked a question about how women are breaking down on this question about abortion versus the economy. The one group of voters that said that Donald Trump's position on the abortion was more important to them than, or was more worrisome to them than Biden on the economy, were college-educated women. Yeah. And so that group of voters, clearly influential in 2022. I think for the Team Biden, what they need is for other voters besides that group, voters who didn't show up in 2022 but plan on showing up in 2024. How are they viewing that issue? That's the group that we're going to be watching very, very closely, especially the closer we get to this election. And the other thing that was, to me, eye-opening about this poll is that it's not that voters don't think that Donald Trump will be more restrictive on the issue. Majorities thought that if Donald Trump is president, there would be the potential for a national ban on abortion. So the stakes are in front of them. That's the question: is do they start to come in?
Amy, tell me about this. We've heard time and again that it's black men, Hispanic men, it's young voters that are sort of wandering away from Biden in worrisome numbers. Are you of the, based on the polling that you see, based on these swing state polls, are you of the opinion that if Biden takes care of the base, brings these base voters back home with him, that he will likely win this election?
I think he needs to bring those folks back to get sort of back to even, and then he needs to do better with independent voters, especially independent women voters, and we're going to be digging into those numbers in the coming weeks, because those are the folks right now who seem to be the most sort of either undecided or curious about Donald Trump, that they need a further examination.
Rev, we've talked about Joe Biden getting tepid support in the black community. I'm curious your thoughts, looking at these swing state polls, but also looking at how they seem to be focusing the Biden campaign more on black voters, Hispanic voters, younger voters with the Morehouse College speech. I'm curious, what do they need to do over the next 2, 3, 4 months to firm up that support before we have the final dash in the fall?
I think they're beginning to do it. It's late, but they're beginning to do it. And that is, they must start focusing some of their messaging right to black voters, young black men. You and I both know music well. There's a difference in a pop station and an R&B station and a hip-hop station. And the problem is they've been playing broad politics when they should also deal with various identifiable issues for different constituencies. Talk to black men about how high unemployment was for black men when Trump was in, as compared to now where it's a record low among black unemployment in the last 50 years. Talk about criminal justice. Donald Trump's position on the Central Park 5, which was totally wrong. And Joe Biden has never done. In fact, Joe Biden signed the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act as an executive order when everybody with Donald Trump voted against it as legislation. They must show the contrast directly in the Latino community, in the black community. Don't expect me to understand a pop hit if you're not playing it on my station. I want to hear James Brown. I want to hear somebody I know. I don't know some of the other acts. And I think that they're beginning to do that when I saw this latest commercial they dropped geared toward the black vote.
Really good. Publisher and editor-in-chief of the Cook Political Report, Amy Walter, thank you very much for coming on this morning.